Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton Wasserman here with you guys to review Rams-Vikings, the wild card matchup in which the Los Angeles Rams defended home turf in Arizona and were able to defeat the Minnesota Vikings and end their Cinderella season. Anybody who's wondering, I'm wearing my Batman villain double collar jacket. 1, because I'm from Florida and it's in Cincinnati and I'm cold. Everybody calm down. 2, we're wearing the same shirt, and we didn't coordinate that, and I don't want to look like too big of dorks here.
Just admit it. You're as cold as the Vikings offense.
Ooh,
Got him.
Good transition.
I like that
Good
one.
transition. We're going to break down what happened to the Minnesota Vikings, or if you're a Rams fan, what happened to the Los Angeles Rams. Now they're heating up a little bit, now setting up a pretty good matchup for them against the Philadelphia Eagles next week. Maybe a little Super Bowl run here for a team that has been there before with a good core of veterans. We're going to get into everything on what this game was all about. We're going to tell you the top 5 graded players for this game. We're going to tell you the stats that told the story, our most impressive, our most disappointing, all that good stuff that you guys are used to from the regular grade release and review show. Dalton, this was, I don't want to get too into it before we do the grades, but not what I expected. We were out getting wings with a couple of friends here at PFF, and before the game, I was like, hey, who's winning this game? And I think all of you said the Vikings, and I was like, nah, Rams are winning this game. I think the Rams are winning.
I'll be honest, this was the game the entire weekend that I had no idea what was going to happen.
It's fair.
I just was I was completely guessing with this one more than any other one because these teams, it felt like beforehand to me that they were very even. Obviously, the Rams getting hot at the end. The Vikings have been hot all season, going 14-3, and especially with the added dimension of now you're playing in a neutral stadium essentially, and the fans seemed to be about 50-50 there, and you know, we saw Sam Darnold play so great all season and then cracked against the Lions last week, but figuring maybe there was a bounce back. But no, this was the game out of the 6 of them. I had no clue on the outcome, and I rarely will admit that because usually I have a solid lean towards one team or the other for some sort of matchup, but this felt even to me, but it ended up not being so even.
Let's look at the top 5 graded players that we had for both of these teams for the Rams win 27-9 over the Minnesota Vikings. Top 5 graded players for the Los Angeles Rams in this one as the victors. Edge rusher Jared Verse. Look at the rookie at the top of the list with an 88.0. Cornerback Kobe Durant with an 86.7. Cornerback Ahkello Witherspoon with an 81.3. Defensive tackle Neville Gallimore with a 78.9. And then rounding things out, another rookie linebacker Omar Spates with a 78.4. In this game, Matthew Stafford, the vet, maybe going on one last Super Bowl run here. We'll see. 78.2. Started out pretty good here in the wild card round. Played really well. On Minnesota side of things, their veteran Harrison Smith is at the top of the list with a 72.5. Tight end TJ Hawkinson at 71.8. Guard Dalton Reisner at 69.4. And then 2 edge rushers here. The first one, Andrew Van Ginkel with a 69.0. And then the other one, Jonathan Grenard with a 68.7. Sam Darnold in this one, not his best game. You mentioned over the last 2 weeks he has really struggled with a 56.1. Dalton, what was your stat that told the story here?
Look, all of the conversation and opinions and everybody's going to be flying around with everything that they're saying is it's going to be about Minnesota. But this game was about the culmination of what Les Snead has so quickly built with Aaron Donald retiring. Rams had 9 sacks in this game. 79.4 pass rush grade, best of the season. 52% pressure rate, best of the season. 60% pass rush win rate, somehow only their second best of the season. 9 players with multiple pressures. Sam Darnold with a 48.3 passing grade under pressure. This Rams defensive line, they didn't blitz very much. They only blitzed 8 times the whole game. Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, guys like Michael Hoyt off the edge, Braden Fisk inside. I mean, this is just if they're going to rush the passer like this, they can beat anybody. Because we already know Stafford and Nakua and Kupp and those guys on offense. Tyler Higbee with a good start before he got hurt. Kyron Williams. We know on offense they can play with anybody. The question was going to be, is there enough pass defense, especially, right? Between, yes, the secondary with some veteran guys back there who were playing last night, played really well, a guy like Ahkello Witherspoon, or you got some young guys at safety. But this was the thing. Do the Rams actually have enough defense without Aaron Donald? You play like this, you certainly do. And I just, all of them up front, just freaks. I mean, even Kobe Turner on the inside, absolute monster only in his second year. Byron Young with one of the best games of his career. Jared Verse, how much more can we say about Jared Verse? PFF Defensive Rookie of the Year, right? I mean, just what they have done with this defense as this season has gone on. You completely forget they started 1-4.
Right.
Started 1-4. You had
Right.
a boatload of offensive line injuries. You had
Nakua was
even
out.
Puka Nakua, and I think there was games where they were both out, Nakua and Cup. I mean, this was a team that just had so much to work through this year, and you see them in their full form, and they continue to get better. But I look, you got really, this Vikings offensive line was banged up, and obviously Christian Darrisaw was out for most of it. He got hurt in the first Rams game, actually. It was a big kind of turning point for their pass protection. But the Rams being able to rush and get home only rushing 4. If you can do that, if you can find a way to do that against a Philly or a Detroit, who have maybe the 2 best O-lines in the league, you're onto something with this Rams team. And if they're going to be two-dimensional with Stafford and the guys on offense and then this pass rush going, obviously you'd love to have an Aaron Donald anytime you can.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, I wonder if he comes back out of retirement to join this party. Probably not, but even without him, there just hasn't been that much
Can
of a
you add him to the
drop-off.
playoff roster? You allowed to do
I
that?
think you could. Pretty sure you just open a spot in the 53 and do it.
I've never thought about this before, so I don't know if you could actually do that or not.
Could you imagine adding him to this group?
Yeah, if Aaron Donald was
Imagine
like,
if they still had him.
Yeah, all right, I'll play next week.
If your front 4 was Verse and Young and Donald and Turner, I don't know what you'd. I might pick him to win the whole thing if they had Aaron Donald right now. But the point is, Les Snead just on an absolute burner the last 2 years, finding these defensive players up front, especially, and this year getting Jared Verse, the best defensive rookie in football. Braden Fisk has been solid, and all the second-year guys who've developed into good players. It is just incredible what their pass rush did in this game, their best pass rush game of the season. And if they continue at this rate, you've got a real shot at upsetting the big boys in the NFC.
Yeah, I'll go right to my most impressive because it goes along with what you said there. It's just I have on here the Rams' young defensive line, sort of to echo what you're saying, but really it's just the Rams' young defense overall. I talked about this in the preview show with Carmen last week. I was wondering what this matchup was going to be like because the Rams' young defensive players have played really well this season, either rookies or second-year guys. So you're looking at Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Omar Spates, Jared Verse, Cam Kinchins. That's 6 out of your starting 11 defensive players are first or second-year guys. So I know that the Vikings they don't have like a ton of playoff experience on that roster, but I wondered how Kevin O'Connell was going to go after those guys as rookies or young players playing in their first postseason game. And it was the opposite. All of those young guys were ready. I mean, all 6 of those young players that I mentioned, rookies or second-year players, graded a 70 or above. Incredible from Les Snead to draft these guys and identify the talent there, but also an incredible job by Sean McVay just to develop these guys and have them mentally ready for this kind of performance, to make the run that they did in the second half of the season once they fully got healthy. And I think we always think of Sean McVay and we think of the offensive side of the ball and all that kinds of stuff, but it's just the masterful job that he has done developing these young defensive players. Half of their starters are first or second year guys. And they played like that against one of the best offenses in the NFL this season with Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold and all of them. So to me, that was a most impressive of how the young guys really stepped up for the Los Angeles Rams. And it makes you want to believe in them moving forward and playing in Philadelphia and going on the road, doing all that, and maybe even matching up against the Detroit Lions, whatever it is. So how those young guys are playing gives you a lot of faith in that area. I'll go back to my stat that told the story, and I brought up Sam Darnold. Unfortunately, these last 2 weeks for Sam have been 2 of the worst of his season. And more unfortunate, they're the 2 games that meant the most, right? You and I, as the season went on, we looked at Sam Darnold and how he was playing under structure, how he was playing under pressure. He had a really damn good passing grade under pressure this year. He played very well when he was under pressure. We talked about here on this show, it looked like he was exercising the seeing ghosts, and over the last 2 weeks, those ghosts were back. And it was the 2 most important games that he had of his season against the Lions with the 1 seed on the line, and then obviously in the playoffs against the Rams. And unfortunately, there's no other way to say it. He crumbled, especially when it came to reverting back to old habits under pressure. You look at his pressure to sack ratio, 34.5%, on the day overall. How often he was pressured compared to when he was taking a sack. That was his highest mark of any game this season. If you go just in the first half, His pressure to sack ratio was 60%. 60%. That's crazy. You got to be able to get the ball out at that point. So I understand that, okay, maybe your offensive line is not having the best day, and we'll get into the offensive line for the Minnesota Vikings, but you got to be able to navigate pressure a lot more than a pressure to sack ratio of 60%. That was a backbreaker for them. And unfortunately for Sam, he's going to get paid by somebody this offseason. He's had too good of a year. The sample size this year is too large for him to not. And there's too many teams that are desperate for quarterbacks around the NFL. But it won't be in Minnesota anymore. And I thought that you and I have talked about this. I thought there was a real debate with how Sam has been playing. And if you make it to the NFC Championship game with this Vikings team, and Sam is playing as well as he had throughout the course of the regular season, how do you let a quarterback like that walk out of the door? I don't think you have those conversations anymore. These are the two biggest games, and these are the two worst games for Sam Darnold. And you're not breaking the bank to re-sign a player like that. You're rolling with J.J. McCarthy next year. So I think that Sam Darnold, these last two games and this game in particular, have solidified that he will be playing elsewhere somewhere next season.
I think as far as Sam goes, there is a problem of holding the ball too long. Last night, average time to throw 3.19 seconds. It's over 3 seconds for the season, and that is an issue of you have to get the football out, because those big sacks, those big 12, 14-yard sacks while you're running around back there, those are drive killers as much as turnovers are, right? And you had too many of those last night, and there was actual turnovers that he committed. I do think, for me, I'll skip the most disappointing real quick. For me, it is the entire Vikings offense, and I think it's kind of actually this season, just as much as last year was when he kept them in wildcard contention, it's a testament to just how darn good Kevin O'Connell is. Because if you look at kind of the slow, subtle breakdown over the second half of the season, these last two games were two of the Vikings' three lowest graded games as an offensive unit this season. 44.7 passing grade for Darnold over the last 2 weeks. But also, you look at the offensive line, and we were worried about it with the Christian Darrisaw injury, and the interior is always kind of shaky there. Since week 11, 27th in run blocking grade. Since week 14, second worst pass blocking grade in the NFL. Kevin O'Connell with this offensive line with Darrisaw out, and as much as they're constantly, even you mentioned Dalton Reisner in the top 5 there, he didn't start till late in the season when they really just needed to replace Ed Ingram with something better. And O'Connell mentioned this last night after the game. He goes, yeah, Sam wasn't good, but our offensive line also didn't help him.
It was bad. It was really bad.
It was bad all the way around.
44.6 pass blocking grade overall in this game. 68.2% pressure percentage allowed from this offensive line. It was their worst day. It was the offensive line's worst day of the season, and it was Sam Darnold's but probably his worst day of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it was a full offensive breakdown, and the two games where really I would say Kevin O'Connell couldn't just save him with the play calling, and you knew, you had a feeling there was something off here when they kept showing the stats even on the broadcast. The Vikings are one of the best first quarter teams in the league. The Rams actually quietly one of the worst first quarter teams in the league. And yet the Rams were up 10-0 after the first quarter. So you had a feeling that was kind of some of the little weaknesses that didn't show up in the win-loss column. The offensive line struggling. Last week we mentioned the red zone, which had been an issue on and off for Darnold all year. And then this week with, okay, if they get off to a slow start, can they recover? Can they bounce back? Because in so many games this year we saw them jump out ahead, right? But when they played the Lions and the Rams, who are still, despite 4 losses, the only 2 teams they lost to, they just didn't get off to that nitro start that they did against everybody else, and this is what happened. So to me, yes, Darnold was not good at all in this game, but when you score 9 points in 2 straight weeks, your entire offensive operation hit a wall here, and that's what happened. And look, they had a great season, and there's a lot of positives to look on, and they made some great free agent signings, and Darnold was great. Kevin O'Connell is one of the best coaches in the league. Now I think offensively you look at supporting J.J. McCarthy, because that's your guy, right? Get better up front.
Yeah.
And I think they'll be in the running back market. I think possibly even with a late first-round pick they could look into. I don't know if Ashton Jeanty would drop to him, but I would take him in a heartbeat. But I think that's where you start to look at is in the running game and up front, supporting McCarthy with that. Because early, obviously, that's what he had at Michigan, right? Better than almost anybody is defense, run game to support it, and then he had to make enough throws. I don't think you want to go into next year expecting McCarthy to carry you through all this.
Yeah, Aaron Jones, obviously just on a one-year deal, so he's a free agent after this season. So they'll definitely have the top of their running back room to think about. I think the cornerback room as well. We'll dig in. Obviously, team needs a lot more than just on this show, but cornerback I think is going to be a major need for this team. Interior offensive line, a big need for this team. I think the most disappointing for me, as we kind of wrap things up here about this game, is just we started this wild card round with two games where I don't want to take anything away from the teams that forced them into the worst games that we have seen from them this season, with the Houston Texans and the Los Angeles Chargers, and then the Los Angeles Rams versus the Minnesota Vikings. But it's just kind of disappointing that it's like, man, this is basically the worst the Chargers have looked this entire year, and they happen to be in the playoffs. And this is pretty much the worst game that the Vikings have played this entire special season for them, and it happened to be in the playoffs. So, again, I'm not trying to take away anything from the teams that won. It was just very clear that, like the Vikings, like the Chargers on Saturday, this was the worst game that they played all season. This wasn't even like an average bad game for them. This is the worst game that they played all season. And that's just kind of a bummer when you think about good playoff.
And the weird part is both Rams games came the week after a Lions game. And there is that stat floating around about teams that the week after they play the Lions.
Emotionally draining, physically draining.
All of it. It's draining. It's hard to play that team, right? And I think when you've caught this Rams team, a really darn good team both times on the road, right after you've just played the Detroit Lions, it is something that holds it. There is something to this where the week after teams play the Lions, they have issues, and it happened again. And maybe they just, in their 4 losses, they caught the 2 teams that are really the worst matchups for them. Because, I mean, a guy, too, that we haven't mentioned at all yet is Matt Stafford. And I think against this Brian Flores defense, when you have a veteran quarterback that can kind of see all the blitzes and rotations and everything that comes with that, you saw Stafford come out and get off to a hot start. And McVay with the play calling, too. That's the level of quarterback and coach that you need to beat this Brian Flores defense. And I think that'll be the other question with the Vikings next season is, obviously O'Connell will be there, but what does his coaching staff look like? Because we've got Brian Flores floating around there. We've got Josh McCown even getting interviews, on the offensive side. How much does the rest of this coaching staff change, especially if Flores leaves? What does their defense look like next year?
I don't know off the top of my head what Matthew Stafford's Hall of Fame case is. Obviously, he has the ring. Like, I don't know exactly how he would stack up against other Hall of Fame resumes. All I can tell you is there's not many quarterbacks that I would rather have in the postseason than Matthew Stafford. I just have so much faith. Like, even in the games where he doesn't play well, I go into those games being like, yeah, I mean, Stafford could absolutely destroy this team. He has that kind of capability to him, especially since he has been paired with Sean McVay. So it does feel weird. It's like, you're right, we went through this whole breakdown and we hadn't brought up Matthew Stafford yet. It's because, to me, it's such a constant. If Stafford has a bad game in the playoffs, I'm more shocked than anything else. I go into every game believing, and I think this might just be the aura and intimidation of the Los Angeles Rams is you got to go up against a coach like Sean McVay, and you have to go up against a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. And I think that there's something to that mental warfare going on.
And if you add the dimension in of this pass rush, and most impressive for me, and he's been most impressive darn near every week, I mean, what else can we say about Jared Verse, man? And it's funny because they had 9 sacks in this game as a team, and he was a guy who didn't have one. And I'll still take him here. 7 pressures, 3 other pass rush wins, the fumble, the scoop and score for the touchdown that really kind of put this game out of hand. 78.7 pass rush grade, 76.1 run defense grade, because he's a great run defender too. And even on that fumble recovery, I had a thought, because there's some D linemen and bigger guys where you're like, you pick up the ball and you're like, is he going to score? And I'm like, no, he's going to score. Because I remember him saying, he talked about playing running back in high school. I'm like, oh no, he knows what to do. He's gone the second he picks it up. But there's only so much we can quantify how darn good Jared Verse is. He's right now, this year, he's been one of the 10 best edge players, not just rookies, one of the 10 best edge players in all of football.
Yep.
And you've got, just doing freakish things up front to these offensive tackles, especially you've mentioned before about the bull rush and the power rushes off the edge. And this was a game where, and he talked about this after the game, he goes, I don't care. I don't need the sacks. I'll take the double teams and I'll set up everybody else because we got a bunch of freaks up here on this D-line. And he's right. I mean, for him, 7 hurries, 26.5% pass rush win rate is just fantastic. And that's what you saw. He's the one, even if he didn't get the sacks, he's the one who made Darnold nervous.
Yeah.
You could see Darnold move in the pocket and making inaccurate throws because number 8 out there off the edge is just he's unreal how good he's going to be in that. He's in that class with the Bosas and the Garretts and the Watts and guys who are that good. He's getting there already in his rookie season. It's incredible to watch.
There we go. Now we have all 6 games of the wild card round reviewed for you guys. Got a lot of fun ones coming up for next week for the divisional round. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can come one today.